Good morning and welcome to the WellMed Charitable Foundation Caregiver Teleconnection. This is a very special presentation. I understand from our speaker, Esther Pipoly, that she actually gave this in a lot of different places, with a lot of different people as a kind of a mini series. So I'll let her tell you all about it. But she's presenting for us today on You Don't Know What You Don't Know. Esther?
Thank you so much, Evelyn. It's good to be back, and I'm going to share my screen with everybody. And I want to thank y'all for ahead of time for sharing time with me. I know how important it is as a caregiver to be in this kind of interesting space where you're looking for resources, you're looking for help, and you don't know where to go all the time. So I'm going to turn this into slide view, and I'm going to minimize myself so that you can see me. I can't see you. Welcome. My name is Esther Pipoly. I'm the owner and founder of Loss of Life Advocates, also known as Lola. For many of you that have heard from me or with me or been to any of our workshops or followed me, Lola is my mother. I like to start with that because my mom was my greatest hero. And when it came time to start a company in search of a name, her name just kind of spoke to me because I wanted to help families before, during, and after a loss of a life or a life transition because there's so many people that need help and they don't know where to go. And my mother was a teacher and she believed that knowledge is power. So, with that, we're going to start the PowerPoint presentation. I want to let you know a little bit about this. We did this workshop last year in about 18 different times across San Antonio and the surrounding counties because we realized that caregivers needed to have one place to show up to with all the professionals in a room. We're probably going to have a few of these towards the end of the year. We took a little break this year at the beginning um, to give ourselves some time just to kind of revamp. But this is something that is very passionate to me. When I was a caregiver, I didn't know where to go, who to go to, and I'm trying to find all the people to tether them together in the the word of sailing, of tying all your professionals, your lawyers, your financial professionals, your home care, your hospice, everything you needed. I could not get that one location for me. I was Googling the heck out of the internet. So this is a workshop that we do, and we have in person for our caregivers. But I know I can't see your hands, but a show of hands is how many of us are showed up today because sometimes there's something we just don't know, and we don't know what we don't know until something comes up, and all of a sudden we're faced with, oh boy, now where do I go? Who do I go to? Well,
Yep.
that's probably most of us, right? And it happens on a daily basis. So that with that, who is Lola? I've already answered that. That's my mom, but we are loss of life advocates or Lola support. We work with families. We started off, and I want to tell you, we started off in 2017 with the idea of helping caregivers and family members, at time of a major diagnosis or a loss of a loved one, or it's going to happen. What do I need to know? And then afterwards, all the tedious details of closing down somebody's life after they pass away, or as I call it, graduation. And all of that seemed like there was nowhere to go to. And so we created Lola in 2017. Since then, it's kind of grown to now where we do birth to bereavement. So we work with a lot of employer groups and corporate groups in San Antonio and the surrounding counties, as well as nationwide, to help them with their employees because we really feel like that's where people get lost. And there's a lot of caregivers that are going to work every day and they don't know what to do. So we are Lola, and I tell people there's very simple things I don't do. I don't jump out of planes and I don't handle reptiles. But it doesn't mean that we don't have Lola advocates that will do that for you if we need to. With that, today we are going to touch on the cost of not being prepared. And this is for you in the room. This is for you to think about what happens if something happens to you. We are already taking care of somebody that we love. We know that maybe they've got a diagnosis and we're working with them and their providers. But before even that diagnosis, we're looking at all the things that none of us want to talk about, right? Because it's like the elephant in the room, this beautiful elephant that I love so much. But I want to go back to this. If we as caregivers are not prepared for ourselves, if something were to happen to us, who's stepping into our role to care for our loved one? The cost of being prepared can, not being prepared can, create a financial loss, can make, bad decisions. We can go wrong directions, right? We can end up, going down one pathway and really, maybe there was an easier way to get there. There's poor decisions that we end up making, and that's not on anybody in particular in the room. That's just, I will tell you, for me and myself, when I was caregiving for my dad, looking back on it 10 years later, I can see all the things that I just didn't know, and I didn't know who to go to, and it ended up maybe costing me time and money. And overwhelmed. The feeling of sometimes us not being able to manage the expectations that other people have for us and being able to care for ourselves, which is really important because we don't tend to take care of us, right? Me, myself, and I. We're taking care of all these other people, our loved one that has a major diagnosis. And in all of that, we forget that number one is us. Put the oxygen mask on ourselves first, and then we run from there. So today's takeaway is why getting prepared is so important. Let's get our caregivers prepared. That is for you. And let's get started. So this is the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to make decisions. Nobody wants to talk about the inevitable. Well, I will tell you, better than the weatherman, we are 100% all going to pass away. We are all going to, at some point in our life, have to face the fact that we are not immortal, that we have to pull ourselves together, and being prepared for our loved ones that we're leaving behind is the greatest gift that we can give them. So let's start talking about preparation because it's very key to us as caregivers. We want to make sure that you have your information in one location. It's important that your family know where this information is and that you are available to answer any questions. I review my information one day a year. For me, it's Martin Luther King Day. It's a day that I have off as a holiday. I go through my Lola playbook and I update all my information. So, we're going to talk a little bit about personal information, your children's information, people who depend on me, guardians, personal representatives, and HIPAA. So, why are these documents so important? Like, what's behind all of them? Knowing proper names is essential because if you pass away, you have to have the right name to match probate or match that end of life closing down process. Probate courts will often ask for copies of marriage certificates or divorce decrees to ensure that heirs are not being cut out. We often need to look for that DD 214, which is that military discharge paperwork. For me, I end up, I'll show you a sample in just a minute, but I use my husband's as a sample because I had to find it. I could not find my dad's 12 copies that he had in his house. My father, without the DD 214, that passport from the military for having served, he's buried at San Jose Cemetery because I couldn't find it. My husband, I had it ready and available, and we were able to bury him at Fort Sam here in San Antonio. So that DD 214 is very important for veterans. Knowing when and your pets eat and any special needs is also important because having family members make sure that if something happens to you, that you've got pets behind, who's going to take care of them, who's going to feed them, what's going to happen to them. And do you have any special arrangements with family members or friends? So this step one personal information sheet is something I always start with, making sure you have copies of birth certificates, death certificates for any other loved ones that have passed away already, your marriage license, divorce or separation papers, adoption papers. All of these things, believe it or not, when you get sick or when you're at the end of your life or afterwards in probate or somebody's trying to shut it down, lawyers may ask for it, or more importantly, judges. So the DD 214, this is what it looks like. It's just I call it the passport for veterans. It's what the time that they served. It gives the start and the finish. This is an older version. I think the newer versions are a little bit more electronic, but this is my late husband's, and it basically was what I had to produce to the funeral home. So they could call into Jefferson Barracks to ensure that he served, verify that information, and then provide me with dates for burial. This personal information is something that you should have that has all of your eligible information, your social security number, your mom's maiden name, the birthplace of your parents, and full names of grandparents. Why is this important for you as a caregiver? Because this is what goes on the death certificate. This is what happens if you do not have this information. The funeral home can't go past a certain point. They cannot fill that death certificate out, which is crucial for you to be able to file for life insurance and close down somebody's estate. Here's a copy of a death certificate, and I always tell people making sure that when something happens, you have the appropriate amount of death certificates ordered. Most families only need a couple because if you're closing down somebody's estate or you're having to notify, sometimes organizations will ask for a copy of this for yourself or for somebody you love. Other times they may ask for the original to be mailed in. Many times that is with life insurance and pretty important documents like that. But knowing that the death certificate is a big part of this process, all things, as you can see, lead in together. So as a caregiver, the blended family, there's more and more of us out there that have his, mine, and ours. And sometimes looking at it, we need to make sure that we're having that conversation with them to ensure that your affairs, what you want for yourself as a caregiver, as well as knowing for the person that you're taking care of, is set up and that the communication has been put into effect, making sure you sit down with your children of that blended family and saying, this is what I want, or this is what mom wants, or this is having those ahead of time conversations can be so beneficial to when there is a major diagnosis, you're not having to have any dissension or any aggravation from family members that were never included. Having this conversation up front is very, very important. So, do you have a team? There are typically two different types of people in your life. Those who would support you and your family if you were hospitalized, and you would welcome their visit. I don't know about you, but that lovely little cloth gown they give you when you go to the hospital is so wonderful. You want people to come in and see you. We don't have our hair done, we don't have our makeup on, right? So, who are those people that you would want to be there for you? And then those who you would rather avoid when you're in a vulnerable situation. And that first person that you choose should have access to your inner circle. That is a person that is responsible for shutting down your social media as well as block and tackle for you. And I use that as an example because when people are hospitalized, especially you as a caregiver, you need your rest if something happens to you. You don't need people coming in and coming out and taking advantage of that rest time that is there for you. It's already taken up by hospital personnel coming in and doing blood pressure and lab work and doctors and nurses. But having the people in place that you need to take care of you is really important. And I know I have a couple of aunts that will show up and sit down and they mean well, but for me, it's like, I'm not here to entertain you. I need to rest and recuperate. So having these people listed is important so that your family knows who to allow in and who not to allow in. So, what about my stuff when something happens to you? Normally, at this section, we have an attorney that comes in and talks about this, but I wanted to show you this slide because people tend to get a little confused with why do I have to probate an estate? Well, there's a lot of things that go into it, and having access to an attorney is really important. We have a lot of wonderful attorneys in probate here in San Antonio and abroad, but knowing who and when to go to is important. Normally, this is kind of how they break it up. If you have to probate, this is done by the will or not a will. But things that have to be probated are the house, personal property, your cars, your tangible cash, business interest, and non-probate accounts, bank accounts, being able to list payable on death, life insurance, IRAs and 401ks and investment and brokerage accounts. Anything that has a beneficiary is going to bypass probate. But if you don't have a will set up, it is very important to get with an attorney to have that done because not having a will can cost you time and money, especially if you have those big assets like land and real estate. That can get tied up with heirs, with multiple heirs, and especially that blended family. So let me make sure I didn't skip anything. So what are the proper documents that you should have in place? Well, the recommendation from our legal professionals is to have a last will and testament, a statutory durable power of attorney, which is the person that you're appointing to handle things for you from, sale of property, making sure they're making decisions for you, for maybe opening bank accounts, closing bank accounts, and paying bills. Your directive to physicians, which is telling you, appointing somebody and telling your agents and your doctors what you want if you become at the point in your life where you want to just be made comfortable, or do you want every life measure to be performed on you to make sure that you continue to live and survive? That's a very important document to have. Your HIPAA release, there's a HIPAA release, which most of us know when you go in a hospital or a doctor's office or a facility, they have you sign that. There's a HIPAA release that our attorneys do provide, which will survive you by 2 years, meaning if something happens to you and your loved ones are having to call upon after you've passed away to your medical doctors to get medical records, having that HIPAA release that's prepared by a lawyer that survives you by 2 years gives the people that you're giving that assignment to the access and the ability not to run into any roadblocks. Appointment of disposition of remains is your agent of record, who is your person that's going to take care of your body, especially with that blended family, right? Making sure that they understand what you want done. An appointment of a guardian for minor children. Guardian is also important because for many of us, having a one-page document that lists who, in case you become incapacitated or you one day are sitting down thinking you're eating tuna and you're eating cat food, your loved ones, by having a guardian document that can be set up to establish who you would want to care for you. It's a little bit more powerful than that medical power of attorney and that durable power of attorney. This guardian document that our lawyers do prepare for our clients will actually list who and who you don't want to be in charge of your person should you become disabled or incapacitated. That's really important to set up ahead of time. And for most families that they've gotten the diagnosis with Alzheimer's or dementia, we actually recommend that document to be signed along with the medical power of attorney, the durable power of attorney, your will, and all of those things that we've listed above. Guardians, in the event that life throws you, again, this is what I was just talking about. You need to make sure you have the people that you would want to represent you and take care of you and make decisions for you if you cannot make them for yourself. But more importantly, also what happens if you don't want, for me, maybe it's not my brother. He doesn't always make good decisions. I do love my brother. But maybe just as an example, I'm not wanting him to have to make decisions for me. I would rather prefer my sister make decisions for me because her and I've had a good relationship and she's always tended to be more of in line with my thoughts about what I want. So guardianship, that guardian document is a really good first step in case you have to do a guardianship. Again, the power of attorneys, medical power of attorney, and your durable power of attorney. Handwritten wills. People ask me about this, and I will tell you that they are valid in the state of Texas. If you are not in Texas, please check with your state that you live in. But in Texas, you can write a handwritten will, and most attorneys will tell you that is not the way that they would recommend it. But if you are at the end of your life or you're in a position where you cannot afford to hire an attorney, handwriting your will in blue ink and signing it and dating it does not have to be witnessed, is the most effective way for you to leave your estate, and probate attorneys or probate judges will accept that. It does mean that in Bexar County, at least where we live, you still have to hire an attorney. Your family would still need to have it probated, but a handwritten will is acceptable in the state of Texas. So a few good deeds, these are things that we talk to families about. The transfer on death deed and the ladybird deed, if you have property, this is a strategy that you really need to talk to an attorney about because you want to make sure that you're consulting them if you have property and you have a loved one that maybe is going to need Medicaid assistance. The ladybird deed, there's a lot of strategies there that they can help you with getting this ladybird deed to protect the property. And the transfer on death deed, while it's not something that some attorneys like to do, they prefer to do the ladybird deed. The transfer on death deed is still a way for families to bypass probate and transfer the property down to their heirs without having to go through probate. The transfer on death deed and the ladybird deed can both be submitted to the county court clerk to transfer the property to your loved ones. I will say the biggest difference, the ladybird deed does not have to be filed before you pass away. It can be filed afterwards. The transfer on death deed does need to be filed before somebody passes away. Again, these are things for you to take in consideration for yourself as a caregiver. And if you've got a loved one that's already maybe in that process and you're caregiving for them and they have property, if they're capacitated, this is something you should seek a lawyer to get taken care of for you because that probate process can be very costly. This is an example of a HIPAA form, which we were talking about earlier. And what is an executor? Naming the right person is really important. I always recommend 2 to 3 people because chances are you will have maybe 1 or 2 people that don't have the capacity to be an executor after you pass away. So choosing the right executor is going to be important. You think you know who the best candidate to act as your executor or power of attorney, but process over people. There are 2 different types of people out there. These are the people, process over people, leaving people out of the details and feeling left out. These are the people that go really fast in a process. And then there's people over process, and this can move cautiously slow in the process, dragging the probate process out longer than it should be. I will use a personal example here. My grandmother died, and I think it took my aunt almost 10 to 12 years to close my grandmother's estate. She was very slow moving. We had a lot of heirs that she had to make happy. But then, if she would have, maybe my grandmother would have hired my uncle, who actually predeceased her. He was very much like, I'm just going to check the list off. He might have gone just right over everybody and said, we're going to make this happen fast because I don't have time for this. So choosing the right executor for your estate is very important and for a power of attorney for you. So this is a DISC. This is a behavioral process that we work with our families through. But just so you know, DISC is a behavior style profile. Families can get this done. It's kind of fun. It's a fun personality thing that you can go to work with your family to find out what their personalities are. Your D personalities are your domineering people. Your I personalities are your influencers. Your S are your stable people, and your C people are the people that are inside the box. They're following all the rules. So knowing how to identify the best person to take care of your executor or your power of attorney sometimes can go back to personalities. So this is something that we love to do a deep dive with, and families will utilize to determine that maybe the son that's the lawyer is not the right fit because he's really busy. He's at high D. You want somebody that's maybe an I or an S that can get everybody to the table and make sure they can get the estate closed and take care of you. So financial information, knowing where your financial information is and how your bills are paid is super important for you and your family. So things to include in this section when you're thinking about yourself and how to get yourself set up, making sure that there's copies of tax returns and your family knows where those are at, who your CPA is, if there's insurance policies, where they're located, who are your insurance brokers, your insurance agent, and copies of any types of leases, office space, storage units, things that your family would need to know about. So let's talk about banking. Many people have at least one, two, and up to five accounts. So making sure that you have your accounts listed with beneficiaries is very important, and making sure that somebody else may have access to that bank account so that if they have to pay bills on your behalf, they can go online or they have that durable power of attorney set up to be able to take it to the bank so that they can pay bills for you. You don't want people freezing your accounts because that's what happens if you don't have the right paperwork in process set up. So banks versus credit unions, I like to make sure that people understand that a credit union will cross collateralize. So if you have a car loan and maybe a business loan with the credit union, they cross collateralize on each other. So you need to make sure that you understand what the contracts are for the loans, and when I say cross collateralization, I'll use my example is here I'm stating in my New Year's Eve, a car dealership. My husband had our cars, our notes through a credit union, and he also had a business loan. And when he passed away, the banker said, "Don't worry about the business loan. That goes through probate." So I stopped paying on that. And I was paying on the car payments. And the credit union, when I called up to make a payment, said, "Hey, we're looking for you because we're cross collateralizing. You haven't made payment on that business loan. So we need to take your cars." And it was a very sad moment in my the after the death of my husband because it was New Year's Eve and I was actually having to sell cars and get new cars and it was quite a mess. But I learned a valuable lesson about credit unions. Have your credit union account, keep it as one thing. If you need to get a loan for something else, ask them how that will impact you if you pass away or for your estate. Safety deposit boxes, many people think that they don't have, they need them. Some people still use them. My dad had lots of little goodies inside his safety deposit box at Frost Bank, and it was kind of fun to go through, but he also had original paperwork in there. So it's something that if you're needing to put, important documents in a box or a location, a safety deposit box at your bank is a secure way. I will say that most people will say they have fireproof safes. Make sure you check with that fireproof safe company to see how long in the event of a fire that those documents will last inside. I've heard that it is as little as 45 minutes with a five-alarm fire. So safety deposit box at a bank can be a good way to secure your information. Credit reports, if something happens to you, you can always pull a credit report and keep one on file so that your loved ones know where all your bank accounts are and your credit card information. There are families that come to me sometimes before somebody's going to pass away, and I'm like, the easiest way is to have permission for your loved one, from your loved one, to pull a credit report. So liabilities is a fancy word for bills. How would someone know how to pay your bills if something happens to you as a caregiver? When are things due? Don't forget about all those subscriptions, Hulu, Amazon, Netflix, workout gyms, and magazines, to name a few. Making sure somebody knows exactly where and when things are due and how to pay them is important. Back to that durable power of attorney and having them listed on your accounts. Vehicles, what happens to your car when you pass away? What if there's a car payment? What happens to the title? Making sure you have those conversations with your bank or whoever you're doing your loan through, and making sure you've got proper documentation. There are documents you can download from the state of Texas or from your own state that you can actually assign a beneficiary to your vehicle when you pass away. Making sure the title is set up correctly and having that conversation with your loved ones about what to do with the car. But the title is where people get kind of stuck. They can't find it. And getting a title is is a very time-consuming process that you have to go through. This is the DPS beneficiary form for the state of Texas, which again lines out who you can leave the card to in the event you pass away. So life insurance or any insurance, keep it current. Make sure that people know the different types of group coverage you have, or Medicare versus Medicaid insurance, your life insurance and beneficiaries, your home, auto, and renters insurance. Notifying your life insurance agent, making sure that if you are moving or your loved one is moving from home to a facility, that you're notifying them. If there's a life of loss of life, notifying them so that you can start the process for a life insurance assignment that you can take with you to the funeral home. So many people don't know that you can actually take a life insurance policy if you're the beneficiary to the funeral home to pay for the funeral, the cremation, the burial. And sometimes they do take percentages. They actually do take a percentage, but sometimes it's worth it not to give up the cash in your savings account. The funeral home will file all of that with the life insurance company for you, and that takes a lot of heavy weight off of it. And sometimes I tell people it's worth the percentage that they're going to cost charge you for that, but it just takes the peace of mind off of it for you. And if the house is vacant, make sure you let your insurance agent know because they need to make sure they update the file. Life insurance, when people ask me what's the big deal, that's how I started Lola. My husband, I had to fight for his life insurance when he passed away. And it took me 840 days to finally come to terms and agree with the life insurance company. And that is what started Loss of Life Advocates, my husband's life insurance money. It's important. I always tell people, even if you think you're too old for it, there are lots of different life insurance companies out there. There's final expense that can pay for those insurance, the burial stuff, and then whatever's left over can go to your beneficiaries. If you need to learn more about this, ask your life insurance agent or any of your insurance agents. They may be able to help you. Your property, when you own, rent, or live, making sure that you have that listed correctly, making sure that you have your family notified. If you're maybe 1/16th owner of a family property and you really don't think about it, your family will want to have to deal with this after you pass away. So having it properly deeded and maybe doing that transfer on death deed or that ladybird deed would help you get that set up appropriately for your family. So what happens when you suddenly pass away and the house has a mortgage? Well, this is where we have property managers and real estate agents that come into play because you need to make sure that you're listed on the mortgage if you're a spouse. You need to make sure you're checking on these ahead of time, making sure what happens if you can't pay the mortgage. For some people, they come to me and say, my mom and dad died. We don't need the house. We get them connected to a real estate professional so that they can work through the mortgage and that process as to what to do with the home. And with real estate, do you buy? Do you sell? Do you rent? Do you Airbnb it? So a lot of people will come to me and say, we have my mother's moving into a facility. We have the home. She's already lost capacity. We haven't done anything to be able to sell it. We don't have the proper documentation. So getting with a real estate agent to set up a strategy of what to do. Some people will Airbnb them just to have that money and that income coming in so that they can offset the cost of a facility, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Maybe like talking to investors. But a lot of this is getting an attorney involved as well as a real estate agent to make sure that you are properly, given that notification of what the process is for you. Most important is a lot of times family will let their other family members move into the home, thinking that that's the best arrangement. Making sure you have an actual contract that you can fall back on, because we hate to say it, but we see more and more family members that squat after somebody passes away. And they say, well, hey, I've been taking care of the house the whole time. As a caregiver, you don't need that extra stress. So making sure you have an appropriate contract in place for yourself and for your loved one will protect you at the end of the day. So assets, people always ask me, Esther, I don't have anything. And I ask them, when you open your front door, when you come in through your garage, close your eyes and then open it up and look around and just walk around in silence and look at all the things that you've collected through the years. Maybe it's your
Mhm.
mother's home. Maybe it's your father's home. Look at all those things. You know what all those things are? They're stories and they're emotional assets. There's a what happened? Why did my mom buy this story? What was behind my dad having this baseball that's sitting on the shelf? Why did my dad have a VCR collection? None of us have a VCR machine anymore. Maybe there's some joy in all of those stories. And I will tell you, there's a company out of Austin called Artifacts, and it's ARTFCTS, and maybe Caroline can put it in, but it's artifacts.com. And these are an organization that if you have a loved one that has dementia or they've been diagnosed or you're going through things, you can actually take a picture and set up an account and make an archive of all these pictures with stories. And this organization works in twofold: one for people that are having to go through selling things off after the loss of a loved one, and the other one is having to maybe somebody that has dementia, having them sit down and tell a story, and they're able to archive it in this website And as that emotional asset is given a story, later on down the road, they can open up that website and their loved one can listen to their own voice telling the story behind that broken tennis racket that maybe dad chased mom around the house with in a playful way. Some of those stories that you have for those emotional assets are super important to capture. And of course, there's hard assets like jewelry and collections and art. So, making sure that you have those things appraised ahead of time is going to be very important for the estate if you have to sell it or if you have to put those things into, categories of who gets what. Knowing that there's an assignment before and ahead of time is important. So this is where we see families get stuck. You have the hoarders, the people that collect everything. And, I have a lot of friends that, they're like, oh my gosh, my mom has the biggest wrapping paper collection. She has every single thing. She doesn't throw anything away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do we get them from here to the right side of our screen, the estate sale home liquidation side? It takes a team, and we've got people that we work with that can actually walk you through getting those steps in place to say, what do you keep? What do you give away? What do you throw away? And as you're going through this process, the people that we work with, our professionals, will make sure that you're emotionally in a good place. Meaning, if you only need to do an hour a day when you're going through this, that's all you need to do. Because we know that there's those emotional assets that are tied to all of these things. And it's just a lot of work to get from the left side to the right side, because then once you're on the right side of the screen and you're actually into that estate sale and home liquidation, you want to make sure you have professionals that are working with you to make sure that they've got things listed right, that you've got the capture of all the information. A lot of estate sales and home liquidation companies will combine a multitude of family homes into one estate sale. So you need to make sure that you've got your stuff itemized and priced and you know exactly what it's going for with that home liquidator or that estate sailor, because they can get things confused among estates afterwards. So making sure that you've got all that ahead of time set up is a great thing to do. And again, the emotional assets. And we laugh about this because I have a china cabinet. And one of the top things that people will say from professionals that I work with liquidators, is that nobody wants the china. So you're better off if you've got multiple sets of china, is if you've got grandchildren, wrap it up, put it in a box, and tell them it's yours. And if you don't want it, give it away. But make sure that you give those things away, because the silver and the china, nobody actually wants. And those are the things that are the hardest things to give away. I always say, go to a university, maybe UTSA has a closet, I believe, where students can go in there and buy things. So if you're looking at trying to get rid of stuff, maybe, connecting with a university to say, are there students that would want to, need dishes, need pots and pans, need silverware? So maybe kind of working with them would be a good thing to do. But yes, nobody wants the china. And I don't know about you, but that was one of my favorite things I did when I was picking out china when I was getting married. So that's kind of heartbreaking. So your life infrastructure, memberships, passwords, medical information, insurance, retirement accounts, business investments, benefits being received, and other information and location of important documents. All the things you do every day that makes your life full. These are things that we need to make sure we have listed somewhere. Also, and I'm going to go back real quick, the memberships part. I'm a member of AAA. I'm a member of AARP. Thank you to my dad. And passwords, we'll go to that next. But those memberships that you're part of are very important. And I say that because just being on this call today as a caregiver and being part of WellMed, I'm going to tell you, I have had a client that passed away, and the people that noticed that she was missing, that she wasn't coming to the forums and the get-togethers, and she wasn't jumping online. These are people that were consistently showing up. The well-med people are the friendships that she made through that organization, or the ones that said something's not right. And they ended up calling the police department in the county that she lived in, and she had passed away from a massive heart attack. And her husband that she was caring for, that gentleman was walking around the house not realizing that she had passed away. It was one of the saddest things that we've ever had to go through from Lola's standpoint, because if it wasn't for her friends at WellMed and it wasn't for her friends in that organization to step up and say, this person's missing and this isn't right, and she's not answering her phone. You guys are a great accountability team for each other. And I want you to know that. So this membership and this part of what you do for yourself as a caregiver being here today is so crucial to you as a caregiver, to make sure you've got your support network around you. Thank you for letting me dwell on that for a minute, because it was one of the saddest things that we've had to work through with a family. But it also was a very grateful moment knowing that it was her peers and her groups that she was going to for caregiver support were the ones that actually were able to, alert the family. So passwords, remembering them is a hassle, but it could be overwhelming if no one can access them when you're incapacitated or deceased. So yes, this looks like me every day because I don't know about you, but every single day I have a password I can't remember. And even though my wonderful mini me, Caroline Goddard, who takes care of me, has set me up with a wonderful password company, it sometimes it forgets and I forget. So just having access to this online password vault systems is so important because it will help you reset. We use RoboForm, but there's LastPass, there's Keeper, there's Dashline. Any and all of these are excellent ways for you to have password protection for access to the things you need for somebody else to access in. You can give emergency access to your loved ones in this password vault system. It's a wonderful way to make sure that your loved ones are not going to go crazy trying to figure out what your phone password is and what your email password is and what your CPS password is. So making sure they have them. But I will say I had one client that she put her passwords in her recipe can under P after behind all of her pie recipes. So everybody has their own way of saving their passwords, but making sure you as a caregiver have them for your loved one and for yourself in case something happens to you is essential. So the hospital emergency room. So we're going to go through something. This section is pretty much geared towards what happens if you have a loved one that goes into the emergency room and all the things that happen, right? Taking the medication, knowing the medications that you're on for yourself, for your family to know, as well as for your loved one is really important because you get there, and as many of you probably know, they're asking you what medications your loved one is on, when was the last time they took it, etc. So making sure somebody has a list or that you have it listed out for your family member is important. And this is where families get stuck. And this is just a case study that I'd like to share with you. We had a mom in ICU at a local hospital, and her physician told him that they needed to take her home and make her family needed to make her comfortable. So they were taking her home on hospice. But the family had no idea what hospice was. And but the case manager is trying to provide them a list to review, and one was chosen so they could go home to get set up. The family goes into a tailspin because first they don't know who to trust with the hospice company, and the case managers can't really give them recommendations. They're just giving you a list. So when this happens, what do? You have to really take a look at interviewing three different companies, at the minimum two. Those people that you're talking to are the marketing people. They're not the actual people that walk in the home and take care of your loved one and take care of you, because hospice is a great bench for you to have. They have chaplains and social workers and medical assistants and nurses, all kinds of people that are there to help you. But if you don't know where to start, this is where families get stuck with just the basic, okay, we're releasing mom home or dad home or your spouse. Now, what are we going to do? So, knowing that you have to make these decisions, just know that you're not alone. You can always contact us, contact one of your cohorts from WellMed. Everybody has recommendations and they can walk you through this process. But when you're having to make a decision, I always recommend interviewing two different hospice companies or home care companies, and asking them questions about, what's your turnover for your employees? What's the average age of your employees? Things like that, because you want to make sure that you're setting yourself and your family up for success. And once one's chosen and you go in, you don't have to worry about the tailspin that this family went through trying to navigate all the things because dad was saying, I've been taking care of my wife, but she's been taking care of me. And now what am I going to do? So it's twofold, right? You're having to navigate that both ways. So palliative care, just real quick, is pain management where treatment can still be administered. A lot of people don't know about this, but a lot of families do qualify for palliative care. So it's pain management. So if you have a loved one that's maybe going through chemo or they're going through some type of treatment, they can still have palliative care and a team around them to care for them. You just have to ask your doctor for it. And hospice care is sometimes, and I want to say palliative can bridge to hospice care, but hospice care is when you've decided to just be comfortable and make the decision for yourself to just make sure that the end of your life has a good quality and your team gets you taken care of by this wonderful bench. I call it a bench like the Spurs here in San Antonio. If you were here for Ginobili and Parker and Tim Duncan, we had a great bench at the Spurs. I call that your hospice bench. You have a great bench with hospice care because you're not just getting the care that's coming in once a day or once a week. As your loved one or yourself progresses towards graduation, you're working with, a team of professionals that can help you manage one, the pain, also the processes, and walk you through what's going to happen. So hospice is something for, time of diagnosis that you've decided I'm going to stop chemo, I'm just going to be made comfortable all the way to the end and graduation. And hospice is a wonderful resource for you as far as after loss support and grief groups. So there are a lot of things that they can help you with. Medicare versus Medicaid, I just like to make a note here. Medicare, age 65 and above, unless there's a disabling condition like end-stage renal disease. Did you work enough to get credits? Is very important for Medicare. TRS versus Social Security, making sure that if you've been in the military or been a teacher, you've got different benefits that can collaborate and coordinate with Social Security. And sometimes it's one or the other, and people don't realize that. So if you've been a teacher working in a school district, and school districts sometimes do TRS versus Social Security, you may have to sit down with a professional to make sure you're managing through that process. And I always tell people, if you have questions, set up an appointment with Social Security and go talk to somebody. It might be a little bit to get in there, but they are the professionals and they can give you good, sound advice. And then Medicaid, the 5-year look back, when people come to us and they're wanting to get their loved one in an in-home care support or facility on Medicaid, there is a strategy to this. This is the 5-year look back. You don't want to do things that will affect your loved one or your benefit with Medicaid. So there are a lot of attorneys and there are a lot of professionals that we work with that we send our families to so that they can get the right advice to put together the right strategy to make sure that they're being put on Medicaid correctly and that it doesn't impact them. There are a lot of things that happen when families have property. They think selling the property is the first thing to do, or doing a transfer on death deed is. That's where that ladybird deed comes into play, and really talking through with a legal professional is important. So non-medical home care, I like to tell people that making sure you understand that these are your ADLs. Can your loved one bathe themselves, dress themselves, feed themselves, toilet themselves? Are they ambulatory? Can they do transferring on their own, or do they need assistance? And these are all things that a non-medical home care, private care company can help you with. They start at $30 to $35 an hour if you need support and guidance. And for many of you on this call, you may think, yes, I already know about this. It is expensive, it is costly, but it's a strategy that you might need to set up for yourself. Of course, I always tell people about respite care because that's something that is kind of like it's like a closing window. It felt like we had lots of respite care many years ago, and now the window for respite care can sometimes be hard to find. But knowing who to reach out to is important. So feel free to contact a home care provider and say, or a hospice company and say, how do I get my loved one or myself on respite? It is out there. It's just knowing where to find it. So misconceptions of Medicare and commercial insurance, these are things that if you are still working and you're still gainfully employed, there are things that are covered with traditional insurances and then what's not covered with non-traditional. So these are again things that I don't want to dive into deep, but what's not covered are the expenses of assisted living and memory care. And of course, there are a lot of home care agencies, private home care agencies that work with veterans, and there is a whole strategy around this. So if you are a veteran or you're caring for a veteran, make sure you talk to somebody about what that would look like, how it affects any of your other income. And there are some benefits that are not income tied, meaning sometimes people will say, well, I don't want to lose my Social Security or I don't want to lose part of my pension. Talking with somebody that has the actual, an endorsement from the Veteran Affairs to be able to work with you and your family through this is important. And really, the true cost of long-term care is, or not having it in place, right, is the physical, mental, and financial fatigue that we all go through as caregivers for a loved one. So if you don't want to do that for your family, there are a lot of professionals that do still have access to long-term care policies or just helping you set up a strategy to make sure you've got everything taken care of. It's those difficult decisions that you and your family are faced with having to move into a facility. What do you need to know? A facility versus private care homes. The cost can range from, $3,500 a month all the way up to $7,500 a month. I want to say that there was a law that was just passed recently in June. It goes into effect 9/1. We're still unraveling it with our professionals and our lawyers to make sure that families are protected when putting their loved one into a private care home. These are personal care homes that are in your neighborhoods, as well as facilities. And it has a lot to do with who they're hiring, if they're licensed, and criminal background checks. So I believe that here in the state of Texas, they're trying to tie up those loose ends for us as caregivers because the last thing we want to do is put our loved ones in a facility where they're not getting the best care by people that really aren't there for the right reasons. So, of course, location of important documents is very important. Making sure that everything we've talked about today is in one location in a notebook, somewhere where your loved ones can find it in case something happens to you. You may go out for what you think is a very traditional in and outpatient surgery, and it may become something that is debilitating for you. So, what you thought you'd be able to get back to caring for your loved one in 3 or 4 days may end up being 3 or 4 weeks. So, making sure that you've got all your documents located in one point is very important. So, your final wishes, like who speaks for you? Do you want to be cremated or buried? What kind of celebration of life do you want? And who knows what you want? These are all things that you need to answer for yourself. Of course, as I was talking about earlier with that DD 214, Veterans Burial Benefits, that DD 214 gets your loved one buried at any military cemetery. It does not cover the actual cremation or the funeral home cost. Many of the funeral homes will have discounts for our veterans, but that is still a budget item that many families have to face. They think that they get everything paid for, and it really isn't paid for all 100%. So organ donation and donating your body, making sure that if you've checked that box off on your driver's license, that your family knows that and that those are your wishes. Making sure that if you want to donate your organs, that they know that, or if you want to donate your body to science, making sure you've got that set up with the system or the school system you want it to go to. I recently had a very loving client that I love and adore, wanted to be donated to science, but he actually was diagnosed with cancer, and he was like, I really wanted my body to be donated, and now I have to go towards cremation. And it really happened in the last couple of weeks of his life. And it was sad for him because that was what he wanted. But we all knew, we were all on the same page, and his loved ones were, so we were able to take care of that. If you travel, consider having these documents with you at all times, depending on what state you're going to, your advanced medical directive, as well as disposition of remains. Because if you pass away or something happens to you out of state, each state has different laws that your loved ones will have to abide by. So it's more than just, getting your loved one passed from one state to the other. It is a process, and making sure you have those people appointed to make those decisions for you is important. And I always like to end with this, and I'm so glad I talked really fast, and I want to apologize. People act like, is there a fire behind me? But I wanted to make sure we got everything in on this presentation. This is my family, and this is who I do it for. This is my son, my grandson, myself in the middle. I just cut all of my hair off. You'll see it when I put myself on camera. My daughter-in-law and my daughter. And I want to tell you that when I think of being a caregiver, my son and his wife are caregiving for me. I live in a generational home now. After my husband passed away, I didn't like being alone. So we live together, and I call myself the age in place champion here because I know that when the time comes, we've got a plan together. I've got my caregivers, but more importantly, I caregive for them too. And I caregive for a lot of the people that we work with at Lola. It's been an honor to work with you today. I just want to remind you that we do provide caregiver support services through our playbooks and our workshops, which what I provided for you today was a very fast workshop. These workshops can take up to 5 hours. We do them from 2 to 5, 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on where we're at. If your church organization is interested, let us know. We bring all the professionals into one location so that you don't have to worry about chasing down people and trying to find all the answers. I thank you for your time. I thank you for everything that you've shared with me. I think time is the most precious gift that we can give each other. I'm going to stop sharing and see if we have any questions. And thank you for letting me talk really fast.
That was truly amazing to get all that information in one place. So people are asking if they'll get a copy of a link to the presentation, and I believe it is proprietary, according to Esther, so no. But I can also tell you, and I think she mentioned before, that you can, whatever form you need or want, that's a legal form, you can contact, excuse me, your state attorney general's office, and they will either have it for you, send you a copy, or they can tell you where to get it. And that's, I think, helpful in many instances. I just did a transfer on death form, and not all states have that. So that's the other thing you need to check and make sure, that the state that you're in has the kind of process that you're interested in. And if it doesn't, what else you can do, and they'll help you with that.
Correct. And we will, and we'll have workshops, and we'll let y'all know so that y'all can send them out to your groups. The the PowerPoint, I try to keep it because I want to make sure we change it all the time. And so we're adding in information and it's constantly being updated. So we'll let you know when we have upcoming workshops for your caregivers.
Very cool. I don't know about the word graduation though. I'm getting really close and I don't feel like it's a graduation.
My client said more like commencement, and I said, well, maybe that too. Yeah, it's hard to tell a family when, especially when somebody's going through the transition and they're on hospice, and you don't want to say end of life, right? You don't want to say, oh, they're going to pass away. You don't want to talk about it. It's the elephant in the room. It's uncomfortable. So we've come up with graduation or commencement, and a lot of them think of it like, you know what, you're right. I'm commencing. I'm going wherever they're going to, that they're going, and they're going to be on the other side. And I always tell people that a lot of my loved ones, the fun ones, have already graduated and they're having a party on the other side. And I can hardly wait to be with them, but not too soon, not soon enough.
Another really local, I don't see any questions here, is a primary care doc called, my primary care doctor called it retire from living.
Oh, there you go. I like that. Thank you. We'll use that for sure.
Yes. And someone asked about a link to the recording. I think if you saw at the beginning, and maybe Minerva, you want to put it back up. Um, but we will have it, this podcast will rerun whenever you want it. You can run it on www.caregiverteleconnection.org. And let's see what else. Oh, Medicare.gov. You can click on long-term care planning, and it's got a whole list of things, much like the lists that Esther has given us. Also, AARP, um, end of life. I can't remember quite the name of it, but we have a presentation by a young woman who's how to talk about end of life
Mhm,
and how to ask the questions that are so that the elephant doesn't want to answer.
mhm,
It's how do you say, okay, so how do you want to die? Or
mhm,
or do you say, how would you like to live for the rest of your life to the end of your life? So a lot of it has to do with the way it's presented, with the words that you use. And many of these websites, and there are very many because we have so many caregivers who've been through it now and who want to give back to other caregivers. So, it's a treasure trove. And you can look on the Mayor Charitable Foundation caregiver website, and you will see many of the kinds of topics that we're talking about right now. How to do a will, how to do, how to make plans, how to. I mean, I've done two or three on long-term care planning because that was my business, and it wasn't about money. It was about for people who didn't have money, who were being taken care of by family members. They couldn't always go to a lawyer or have someone professional help them out. So there is so much there. Please take advantage of it. And let's see.
I had
Whoa.
a question, and
Yes.
I think you kind of touched on it regarding vehicles. What's the process if you've already paid off and you don't have any loans on it to transfer
Yeah,
it?
that is that. I think it's one I-30U. It's on the Texas Department of Public Safety website, and you can go in there and say, I want to be able to. It's just a one-page form, and you just put all the information in, and you assign your beneficiaries to it, and then all they have to do is take that form and the death certificate into DPS afterwards, or I guess their local office, state office, and then they'll transfer the title over.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's a form. There's a lot of things, right?
And Esther, someone asked about what is the name of the charitable organization you just mentioned? And I think what you were talking about was the WellMed Charitable Foundation,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because you charge for your services, right?
I do, and I want to make sure everybody knows that we are for profit. We work with a lot of nonprofits and have a memorandum of understandings with them, so they pay for our services for members that come through. So we have a lot of people a lot of organizations we work through. But I always tell people, remember, my husband died, and my husband died unexpectedly, and so I had to come up with a way to be an independent woman as I could. So
Make a living, yes.
when Lola started, I was like, I had the decision to go nonprofit or for profit, and I went for profit. But I work with a lot of fabulous nonprofits that we work through memorandum of understandings for with. So call us, we can get you connected, and we can find a resource for you if you're interested in our services. But we also have very, very low packages so that we can take care of people. The idea is we don't want anybody to feel like they can't afford us.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to say that, your presentations, as always, you provide so much information. If people had questions, how would they contact your organization?
Sure. And the phone number is 210-802-2224, or you can email us at info@lossoflifeadvocates.com. Also, I know Caroline's going to say, Esther, you should have said this. You can also go to our website, lossoflifeadvocates.com. There's some intake forms where you can click on a button, put your information in there. It comes into our email, and then one of us will call you back.
Would you give me that phone number again so we can
Sure.
put
Yeah,
that?
210-802-2224.
Thank you so much. Okay, I have, let's see. Okay, did I hear that this PowerPoint presentation will or will not be forwarded? It will not be forwarded, sorry. But you can listen to it again. You can listen to the podcast and see all the cool stuff on and it has been resent out. Thank you, Minerva. It is the caregiver teleconnection, www.caregiverteleconnection.org. And we also have it on YouTube now at youtube.com at WellMed Charitable Foundation. So you can listen to all the podcasts that you'd like. And please fill out the survey for us. And before you go, I have to ask, there are a lot of people on the phone. I don't know if you all are registered today. If you're not registered, you won't get the resources like these phone numbers and the website and that kind of stuff. So make sure you're registered. And you also won't get the monthly calendar, which is really important. It has all of the upcoming presentations on it. So if you're not registered, call our wonderful Minerva, who is our customer service person, at 866-390-6491. That's 866-390-6491. And just as a little tickler, I want to tell you that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 presentations up next month, which all look incredibly fun. Dr. Tam, we've got Dear Lucy, Positive Caregiving Journey, we've got Polypharmacy, and how caregivers can stop arguing about money. That's going to be a really good one. The heart of care partnering. Heart of Care Partnering. 10 values to ground and guide us all. So with that, I leave you and I thank you all so much, especially you, Esther, for such a beautiful job you did. I also want to thank the caregivers for everything you do every day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. And you'll hear this little announcement as I